Hello and welcome to The Drum. I'm Steve Kinane. Coming up, carbon date. Julia Gillard prepares to reveal the details of the carbon tax on Sunday, why the trucking industry thinks it should be exempt, and the news of the world phone hacking scandal hits a new low. Our panel tonight, ABC News Radio's political editor Maria Spenson, Peter Lewis from Essential Media, and in Melbourne, former Howard Government Minister and New Drum columnist Peter Reith. Well, it's been a long time in the making, but the federal government has finally set a date to unveil its carbon tax. All will be revealed on Sunday at lunchtime, including the starting price and compensation for households. Julia Gillard says she's ready to start selling the carbon price to the people.
I will be out day after day following Sunday, taking every question from every Australian family who wants to ask me. I will be travelling to all parts of the country, prepared to take questions from Australian families about how we are pricing carbon, what we are doing to assist families and what we are doing to protect jobs. I will be wearing out my shoe leather, literally, Mr Speaker, around the country, making sure that Australian families who want answers about the carbon pricing package get those answers.
The Greens are on board, and independent Tony Windsor has given his strongest indication he'll support the carbon tax.
I think it'll be a momentous occasion, actually, something that I think I'll be able to look back on and be very proud of. As I've said in the past, this isn't about this week, this month, this year. It's about the future, and it's about the future of people who aren't even here now.
But the opposition is accusing Labor of avoiding scrutiny by dropping the package just as Parliament takes its long winter break. The Shadow Environment Minister was today making some pretty dire predictions about the effect of a carbon tax on the Australian economy.
When it comes to cost of living, this will be Sunday bloody Sunday. Today, the test for Labor members from steel seats, for Labor members from mining seats, for Labor members from coal seats, for Labor members from manufacturing seats and for Labor members from farming seats is to stand up for their electorates in the Labor Party room.
And both truck operators and farmers are still concerned about what effect a tax on fuel would have on their industries. Peter Reith, you've said that Sunday's announcement will be a disaster. Why do you think that?
Well, the big problem for the government is that they're proposing a new tax, but they can't tell you what you're really going to get in the way of benefits on the other side. And sure, they've got some compensation that might do the trick or it might not, but, there's no sort of, huge benefit to the Australian economy. In fact, when you look at it, and from all the people who are squealing about this tax, the fact of the matter is that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of Australians worse off, either directly or indirectly. Now, and then when she says, I just think it's amazing. I mean, she says, she's going to go around Australia and answer every question. There's no way known she's going to have the answer. She's going to trip up within days because this is a very complex tax. And, of course, sitting behind it is that their plan is to do this for 3 or 4 years, and there'll be another increase and another scheme and another huge pain inflicted on the Australian economy. So I think for her it is a disaster. I think it's just another step towards the demise of the Labor government. I really do.
Peter Lewis, your response to that, is it going to be a complex tax and a hard sell?
Oh, there's no doubt it will be a hard sell. The water has almost been poisoned to date by the incessant scare campaign by Tony Abbott and the Liberal Party. I think, though, Sunday gives Labor an opportunity to recast the debate. Firstly, the unknowns will be on the table and known. The second point is that the focus politically moves from putting pressure on the government over what the package is to actually getting the legislation through and putting it into law. And then the great unknown, how does this play out once it becomes policy rather than a policy debate? Peter lived through the GST debate. So I got my acronyms mixed up there. The GST debate, he actually managed to, with his government, quell down the disquiet that had been growing for a long time and got away with it at the next election. In contrast with work choices, there was also a long campaign against it, and on that occasion it was all over Red Rover by the time the laws are in. So there are two models there, and I don't think anyone can really predict how it's going to play out.
Marius?
No, well, I agree with that. Can I just say, though, sure. on the GST, look, we took the GST to the people in 1998 and it had very strong support, admittedly more amongst the aficionados, the people who are interested in tax reform, I suppose.
Whereas this only has the support of scientists and, the business community.
Yeah, no, sure. But, in fact, we still lost seats. That's the point I'm making. We lost a whole swag of seats to get that reform through. Julia can't afford to lose one seat, let alone the whole lot that we did in 98 with a far better, quite frankly, package and a much bigger package, and where there was just no doubt that Australian businesses were going to be better off. There's just no doubt on this occasion they'll be worse off. So Peter, I think it's optimistic. I really do.
Marius?
Peter, the difficulty in particular for you with the GST was that it was still in prospect and people could still live in fear of what the reality might be. Labor's hope now is, and as you say, it's going to be a really hard sell. Selling a tax is awful. You can't sell a tax. It's never going to be popular. And you pointed to a big problem here for Labor in particular, because you can't point to any benefits immediately. There are no economic benefits. This is long-term benefits. It is being sold as a benefit to the planet, a benefit to future generations. But the hope for Labor would be it will have been in for 12 months by the time people are voting on it, and they would be hoping that the experience of the tax won't live up to the fear campaign. You just saw Greg Hunt summarising the fear campaign. Ruination, jobs lost. The truck industry is saying there'll be deaths on the roads because truckies will be working harder. Labor's hope is that 12 months down the track, people will be saying, wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but look at this. I mean, I'm reading from the paper here from some bloke who runs two zinc lead melting and refining plants, one in Port Pirie and the other one in Hobart, and he says our competitors in Asia don't have a price on carbon, and if we get one in Australia, then we're going to be uncompetitive and 1,500 jobs are going to go.
At this point, Peter, at this point it is still all rhetoric, and all these businesses are saying the world's going to end, are also investing in plants, saying that they're telling the markets they're going to continue to expand. You can't have it both ways.
Peter, I noticed today you were saying that, and you're one of the architects of Fightback, and you mentioned today that it was 20 years since Fightback was launched, and you said that you didn't regret a moment of it and you'd do it again. Now, I was wondering if you remember what your climate change policy was as part of Fightback.
Well, that does go back a long way, I must say, but I don't think we were proposing a carbon tax. And
no, but you were proposing reducing...
Hang on. We certainly didn't go to an election, as Julia Gillard did in the last election, saying, if you vote for me, there will be no carbon tax. Now, in fact, in 1998, we said if you vote for us, you'll get the GST. So that was an honest statement.
What you were proposing was a 20% cut to greenhouse gas emissions. That was back in 1991 you were proposing that. Do you still support that kind of large cut in greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, the great thing about the GST is that there was a new tax, sure, but we were abolishing a whole lot of taxes and we were taking tax off business. And quite frankly, if we hadn't brought the GST in and the revenue that came from it and the efficiency, then Australia would have been in a lot worse position than what we were in the GFC. So I don't apologise for that at all. It was a really good decision. There's no way known people are going to say that, killing off Australian businesses, which quite frankly is not a scare campaign. I mean, this is a guy who's actually running a business telling you he's not running a scare campaign. He's just saying, if you put a tax on us and make us uncompetitive, then we can't stay in business. I don't consider that a scare campaign.
What I'm curious about was that back then, and you're an architect of this policy, the policy was 20% cut to greenhouse gas emissions in Australia. Do you support those kind of big cuts still? Because you're a trailblazer in that fashion.
Look, you might think it's a relevant thing to say, but the fact of the matter is that the Australian economy is very different today than what it was 20 years ago, partly thanks to some of the reforms introduced by the Howard government and also some of the financial reforms introduced by a Labor government. So I don't think dwelling on the past is the way to go, but in terms of the future, Julia's trying to sell something which is basically all pain. And, even her tactics this week, she's tried to avoid the use of the word tax when everybody knows it's a tax. And she's been letting out the good news. Well, I don't know why it's good news, just to be told you're not going to be taxed. And what's she going to have left on Sunday? I'd have to say it's going to be basically an announcement of more pain, a lot of pain, for no gain.
Peter, as a proponent of small government, what's your view on the Liberals' direct action plan where they're proposing to give public money to the big polluters, asking them maybe to cut their polluting down a little bit?
Well, I think it's a sensible way to go. It gives them some direct control over where the money's going. So that's better than a market mechanism? Well, this is not... The carbon tax is not a market mechanism.
It's a transition to a market mechanism.
Well, I mean, you believe what they say. I don't. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 3 years' time or 5 years' time. I don't know if there's going to be an ETS. I don't believe anything they say. They're introducing a tax, and as far as I'm concerned, the one thing that is pretty obvious, and that is that the tax is going to go up and up and up. Or if it's not the tax, as you say, the ETS, then the financial impost on Australian business will certainly be going up.
Peter Reith, Tony Abbott was talking in Parliament today about the carbon tax, another urgency debate that he called on. He was referring to so-called carbon pollution. A lot of people say he's not fair dinkum, it's simply window dressing. Is that a fair dinkum policy, the opposition policy on carbon, or is it just window dressing in your view?
Well, I don't see why it's window dressing. I mean, they put up, I think, $10 billion. I don't have to worry myself with the details of the money anymore. But
$700 per household.
Well, I mean, they've got a series of specific proposals. Some of the money I think they would use to take out the Hazelwood station because of its emissions.
And
I mean, I think there are some positive things there.
Specific proposals require a forestry program that would cover an area the same as Germany, and that